Hi, I am Alex.
Hi, I'm Clara.
Please subscribe to Tinydreams channel.
Press the bell icon to get more updates.
Long ago, in a far-off kingdom lived a king and a queen who longed to have a child of their own. Their wish was fulfilled after a beautiful girl was born to them. The king and the queen's joy knew no bounds, so they decided to host a royal dinner party. All the fairies in the kingdom were invited, for the king and queen knew that they would each give a wonderful gift to the new princess. But King forgot to invite an old fairy who was very wicked. On the day of the party, the fairies began to offer their gifts. The first fairy gave the gift of beauty. The second gave happiness. The others gave goodness, health, gracefulness, and kindness. The seventh fairy was just stepping forward when the door burst open. In rushed the bad-tempered fairy, furious that she had not been invited. Everyone shrank back as she rushed up to the cradle. On your 16th birthday, you will prick your finger with the spindle and die, she hissed spitefully at the baby princess before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Everyone shivered with horror, but at that moment, the seventh fairy, who had not bestowed her gift, stepped forward. "Take heart," she said to the king and queen. "Your daughter will not die. My magic isn't strong enough to break the wicked spell, but I can weaken the evil. Instead of dying, the princess will fall asleep for 100 years and will wake up only when kissed by a prince." The king, hoping to save his daughter, immediately ordered every spinning wheel and spindle in the land to be burned. For 15 years, everything went well. The princess grew into the most beautiful, the kindest, and the most graceful child anyone had ever seen. At last, the day of her 16th birthday arrived. The king and queen held a magnificent party for her in their palace. They thought that this would stop her from finding a spindle on that day and so protect her from the wicked fairy's curse. After the feast, the princess asked if they could play hide and seek. When it was her turn to hide, the princess ran to the far corner of the palace and found a small doorway she had never seen before. She climbed spiral staircase to a high tower, thinking that this would be a wonderful place to hide. When she reached the top, she found a little room. Inside was an old woman sitting at a spinning wheel. "What are you doing?" asked the princess, fascinated by the twirling wheel and the whirling spindle, for of course she had never seen anything like it. "I am spinning," replied the old lady cunningly, for she was the wicked fairy in disguise. "Would you like to try?" The princess sat down and took the spindle. No sooner had she picked it up than the point of the spindle pricked her finger. At once she fell to the ground as she were dead. The wicked fairy's curse had come true, but the good fairy's spell came true too, for the princess was not dead, only sleeping. Immediately, everyone else in the palace fell asleep as well. The king and queen nodded off on their thrones. The guests dozed off as they looked for the princess. The cook started snoring in front of her oven. All over the palace, nothing could be heard but the gentle sounds of hundreds of people sleeping. As the years passed by, a great hedge of horns grew up around the palace. Nearly everyone forgot about the king and queen and their beautiful daughter. But one day, 100 years later, a young prince rode by and saw the great hedge of thorns. He stopped and asked an old man what was behind it. The old man told the prince about the palace. The prince was excited by the story and impatient to find out whether it was true. He drew his sword and started to hack the thorns. To his surprise, the thorns seemed to part in front of him, and in a very short time he had reached the palace. He went through the open door and was amazed to see all the people inside fast asleep. Every single thing was covered in dust, and there were huge cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. He explored all the rooms in turn and finally climbed a spiral staircase to the top of a high tower. There, in a small room, lying on the floor, was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She was so lovely that without thinking, he leaned forward and kissed her. Immediately, the spell was broken and the princess opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was the handsome prince. The prince led the princess gently down the spiral staircase. All around them, they could hear the sound of the palace coming to life. The prince asked the king and queen for permission to marry their beautiful daughter. They agreed, and soon plans were being made for the wedding. The 7 good fairies were invited to the wedding feast. They wished the princess and her prince a long and happy life together. As for the wicked fairy, nobody knew what happened to her. The Snow Queen. Sam, what are you writing?
I'm writing my homework, Didi. My teacher has asked me to write a story about friendship.
Hey Sam, I know a wonderful story about friendship. What's the name of the story, Didi? The Snow Queen. Once there was a wicked wizard who enjoyed making weird things. One day, he made a magical mirror. This mirror was like no other, for it made everything reflected in it appear ugly. Beautiful fields looked like marshy swamps, and the prettiest people looked like old hags. The wizard was so proud of his mirror that he flew with it around the world, causing trouble. One day, when he was flying high above the earth, he laughed so much over the misery his mirror caused that the mirror slipped from his hands and fell to the earth to splinter into 1,000,000 pieces. The splinters flew all over the place. Some stuck in people's hearts and made them cold and hard. Other tiny specks blew into people's eyes and made everything they saw appear twisted and ugly. The largest piece of all fell on the Snow Queen, who ruled the icy lands of the north. From that moment on, she became the coldest and meanest woman who ever lived. Meanwhile, far away from the Snow Queen's chilly home lived a little boy and a little girl called Kay and Gerda. Kay and Gerda were the best friends and loved each other dearly. Every day they played together, even in the winter when the Snow Queen blew her icy breath across the land. One winter's day, Kay and Gerda were making a snowman in the village square when Kay let out a cry. "Ah! Ah! Something flew in my eye!" he cried, "and I felt a pain in my heart." Alas, splinters from the magical mirror had fallen on Kay. "Hey, can I do anything for you?" asked Gerda. "Get lost!" shouted Kay before kicking over the snowman. When Gerda started to cry, Kay laughed. Then he grabbed his little sledge and sped away. Kay played alone in the snow until a big sleigh stopped nearby. Kay couldn't see who was driving the sleigh, but he did not care. He fastened his sledge to the back of the sleigh, so when it pulled away, it took him with it. On and on went the sleigh, dragging Kay behind it, until it reached an icy palace. Once there, the driver of the sleigh got down and called to Kay in an icy voice. "Come here, Kay! You must be freezing!" It was the Snow Queen. Kay wasn't at all afraid. He wasn't even scared when the Snow Queen bent down and gave him an icy kiss on the cheek. This kiss cast a spell over Kay. It made him forget all about Gerda and think that the Snow Queen was the most perfect person he had ever seen. But worst of all, it froze his heart. Back at home, Gerda had searched high and low for Kay. Everyone in the village had joined in, but Kay was nowhere to be found. "Perhaps he has fallen in the river," an old man suggested. Gerda took her best red shoes and threw them into the river, begging the river to give back Kay in return. But the river had not seen Kay, and the red shoes were swept back. "How will I find him? How will I find my best friend?" wept Gerda. As if in answer, a little boat appeared at the river bank. Gerda climbed aboard the boat and was swept down the stream. On and on she went through lands and kingdoms she had never even known existed. At last, the boat came to a halt in a forest. "Where am I?" Gerda asked a passing reindeer.
Lapland, replied the reindeer.
Have you seen a little boy with blonde hair? Asked Gerda.
I think such a boy is living with the Snow Queen in the north,
said the reindeer.
Jump on my back and I will help you in your search.
The reindeer galloped day and night until they reached the Snow Queen's palace. As Gerda stood outside the icy walls, she shivered with fear. But she knew that it was up to her to rescue Kay. Inside the palace, Kay was cold and alone. The Snow Queen was away, and all Kay had for entertainment were some chips of ice. The Snow Queen had told him that he could go home if he could form them into the word free. But however hard Kay tried, he could not do it. When Gerda saw her beloved friend, she rushed to his side. She held him in her arms and wept as she realized that he did not even recognize her. Her tears were so pure, full of love, that when they fell on Kay's chest, they melted his frozen heart. Kay began to cry too. As he cried, the splinter of glass was washed from his eye. And when he looked down at the chips of ice, they had arranged themselves into the word free. Kay hugged Gerda with joy. "You are the best friend a boy could wish for," he smiled. Their tears of sorrow were quickly replaced with tears of joy. Come on, Kay, let's go home." And after that, Kay and Gerda never fell out again.
Because she has dropped her matches in the stream, and her father will beat her if she goes home with no money. Pull out my other eye and take it to her. It doesn't matter if I'm blind.
And so the bird flew over the little girl. And dropped the sapphire into her hand. "What a beautiful little stone!" exclaimed the girl, and she ran happily home. Meanwhile, the swallow returned to the prince and said, "Now that you are blind, I cannot leave you alone. I will fly over the city and tell you everything I see." The swallow was able to see for himself all the poverty that the prince had described, while the rich enjoyed the luxury of magnificent palaces. The poor suffered terribly and had barely enough to eat. "Take the gold that covers me and give it to the poor," said the prince. So the swallow took the fine gold that coated the statue and distributed it among the city's poor, who thanked God, for they now had money to buy food for their children. The days passed and snow began to fall. The swallow felt colder and colder as the winter progressed. When nobody was looking, he pecked at the breadcrumbs he found at the bakery door and tried his best to stay warm by flapping his wings.
finally, one day, he felt that he would die very soon. With great effort, he flew up to the prince's shoulder and whispered in his ear, "Farewell, my dear prince. Permit me to say goodbye. I'm glad that you have finally decided to fly to Egypt," said the prince. "But first, I must tell you that I will miss you and I love you." "It's not to Egypt that I'm going," replied the swallow bird, "but to the land of the dead, and I will miss you too." The swallow kissed the prince on his head and collapsed at his feet. At that very moment, a strange noise came from inside the statue. It was the leaden heart which had broken into two. The following day, the mayor of the city ordered that the ugly and shabby-looking statue of the prince be demolished and its metal melted down in a furnace. But though several attempts were made, the statue's leaden heart could not be melted, so it was tossed along with the swallow's lifeless body upon a heap of garbage. "This heart is not even worth keeping as a souvenir," decided the mayor. At that very moment, God said to one of his angels, "Bring me the two most valuable things you can find in the city." So the angel brought back the leaden heart and the dead swallow. "You have chosen well," God said to the angel, "for the swallow shall sing eternally in the garden of paradise, while the happy prince shall sing my praises in the city of gold." Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful girl called Cinderella. She lived with her father, stepmother, and two stepsisters. After the death of her father, the wicked mother and her daughters began treating Cinderella like a slave. They made her do all the household chores and never made her feel part of the family. Cinderella used to feel very lonely. One day, a royal messenger announced that a royal ball would take place and all the young ladies were invited. "I will wear my red velvet gown," said the eldest stepsister happily. "I will wear my green velvet gown," said the youngest stepsister. The day of the ball arrived. The stepmother and her daughters dressed up and went to the ball. Cinderella stood near a window and watched them go. "I wish I too could go to the ball," she thought sadly. Suddenly, a fairy godmother appeared before her. "Why are you crying, my dear? Do you want to attend the royal ball?" she asked kindly.
"Yes, but how can I go to the ball dressed in rags?"
Cinderella asked the fairy. Wipe your tears. Bring me a pumpkin, 6 mice and a rat, said the fairy godmother. At once Cinderella obeyed. The fairy godmother touched the pumpkin with her magic wand. Instantly it changed into a beautiful golden coach. Then the fairy godmother turned the mice into 6 horses and the rat into a coachman. Now all you need is a nice dress, said the fairy godmother. She lightly tapped Cinderella with her wand. Immediately her rags changed into the most beautiful gown she had ever seen. Now Cinderella looked like a princess. As Cinderella sat in the coach, the fairy godmother warned her. Remember, you must return before midnight or the magic will be over. I will, promised Cinderella. Soon Cinderella reached the palace. All the people in the ballroom gazed at her. What a beautiful girl, they whispered. What a beautiful dress, sighed the stepsisters. The prince too was enchanted by Cinderella's beauty. All evening he danced only with her. Suddenly, as the clock began to strike midnight, Cinderella remembered Fairy Godmother's warning. Oh, I must go, cried Cinderella and ran out. Wait, tell me your name, cried the prince and ran after her. But Cinderella was gone. Suddenly, the prince saw something glittering on the stairs. It was one of Cinderella's glass slippers. The prince picked it up. The next day it was announced that the prince would marry the girl whose foot fitted the glass slipper. A minister went from house to house with the glass slipper. When the minister reached Cinderella's house, the 2 stepsisters eagerly tried the slipper, but it did not fit either of them. It's your turn now, the minister told Cinderella. She is only the servant girl, protested Cinderella's stepmother. She must try too, replied the minister. The slippers fitted Cinderella perfectly. Her stepmother and stepsisters were shocked. Just then, the fairy godmother appeared. And changed Cinderella into a princess. She's the princess from the ball, gasped the stepsisters. Cinderella got married to the prince, and they lived happily ever after. Once upon a time, there lived a man and his wife. They did not have any children, but they really wanted to have one. After a short period of time, the lady was expecting a baby. One morning, when she was looking out of her window, she saw a beautiful lettuce garden next door. From that moment, she could not think of anything else except that lettuce. I wish I could eat them,
husband's heart sank when he heard her. This garden belonged to a wicked witch who would let no one to enter. But he loved his wife very much, and so with pounding heart, he went into the garden to pick the juicy lettuce. But as he was about to pick the lettuce, the wicked witch caught him.
"You thief! How dare you enter my garden?"
She screamed. He fell at her feet and begged,
Please don't curse me. If my wife doesn't eat this, she will die. She's going to have a baby and is very ill.
"I will let you live
she said slyly,
if you promise to give me your firstborn."
The poor man had no other way but to agree. He took the lettuce to his wife and soon gave birth to a beautiful girl. But as per the agreement, the witch came to take the baby away. The beautiful girl was named Rapunzel, and the witch took her to faraway land and locked her in a high tower. The tower had no doors or stairs. There was only a window on top. The only person whom Rapunzel ever saw was the wicked witch. She grew up to become the most beautiful girl, with pretty eyes, beautiful voice, and her golden hair grew very, very long. All day long, when Rapunzel was alone, she would sing and weep. Such lovely things are yours and mine forever. The peaceful streams, the murmurs of the sea, the far-off hills that glow with purple heather. Such lovely things God made for you and me. Hey birds, sing with me. I'm alone. Come, be my friend. Rapunzel wanted to go out and explore the world, but she was locked in that high tower. Every day, the wicked witch came to the tower with food. She stood at the bottom of the tower and shouted,
"Rapunzel! Rapunzel! Let your hair down!"
Rapunzel would drop her long braided hair through the window. The witch used the hair as a rope to climb into the tower. One day, a handsome prince was passing by and heard her sing. Such lovely things are yours and mine forever. The peaceful streams, the murmurs of the sea, the far-off hills that glow with purple heather. Such lovely things God made for you and me. He fell in love with her voice and, unknown to all, came to the tower every day to hear her sing. One day, the prince saw the witch climbing up the tower using Rapunzel's hair. The next day, the prince too called out to Rapunzel, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," he said. The prince climbed to the top of the tower. After that, Prince came to meet Rapunzel every day. Alas, the witch soon discovered the prince with Rapunzel. She pushed him from the tower onto a thorny bush, making him blind. She banished Rapunzel into the desert far away. Many years passed. The blind prince wandered alone and finally reached the same desert. One day he heard a familiar voice singing, "Such lovely things are yours and mine forever. The peaceful streams, the murmurs of the sea, the far-off hills that glow with purple heather. Such lovely things God made for you and me." Following the sound, he found her. They hugged each other in joy. Tears of happiness rolled down Rapunzel's cheek. As the tears fell on the prince's eyes, he regained his vision. The prince took Rapunzel to his kingdom, and they lived happily ever after. And what about a story?
Yay! We are coming! Mama, which story are you going to tell?
Come, sit with me. I'm going to tell you the story named Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It was the middle of winter. The snow fell softly as a beautiful queen sat sewing by a window. As she gazed out at the wintry scene and watched a blackbird perching on a snow-covered branch, she pricked her finger with her needle. "How I wish I had a daughter with skin as white as the snow, lips as red as my blood, and hair as black as a blackbird," she thought. Not long afterwards, the queen did indeed have a pretty baby girl who was just like the one she had wished for. The queen called her daughter Snow White. Sadly, the queen died soon after Snow White was born, and Snow White's father, the king, married again. His new queen was very beautiful but vain. Every day she would go to her magic mirror and say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror would reply,
"You, O Queen, are the fairest one of all."
Then the queen would smile because she knew that the mirror always spoke the truth. The years passed, and Snow White grew into a beautiful girl. One day, the queen looked in the magic mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And this time the mirror replied,
"You are fair, O Queen, it's true, but Snow White is fairer now than you."
The queen was so angry and jealous that she decided Snow White must die at once. She sent for her huntsman and told him to take Snow White deep into the forest and kill her. He must then bring back her heart to prove she was dead. The huntsman led Snow White deep into the forest. He said,
"But I cannot take you back either. I will leave you here, but you must promise never to return home."
Snow White agreed. So the huntsman left her and returned to the palace. On the way, he killed a deer and cut out its heart. He took this to the queen and pretended it was Snow White's heart. Poor Snow White wandered through the forest feeling tired, lonely, and very hungry. At last she reached a clearing and saw a little house. She tapped on the door, and when there was no answer, she went inside. There she saw a long, low table laid with 7 plates. There were 7 little cups, 7 little knives and forks, and 7 little bowls. Snow White was so hungry that she sat down and took some bread and cheese and drank a cup of milk. Then she went upstairs and found a room with 7 little beds. She found one that was comfortable, snuggled into it, and fell sound asleep. Now the cottage was the home of 7 dwarfs. Every day they went to a nearby mine and dug for diamonds. When night came, they returned home carrying their shovels, pickaxes, and bags of jewels. When they arrived home on this particular night, they saw at once that someone had been in their house and eaten some of their food. When they went upstairs, they straightway saw Snow White asleep. "Who can this beautiful girl be?" they asked each other in amazement. When Snow White woke up, she told them her story. The dwarfs felt so sorry for her that they invited her to stay with them and be their housekeeper. But they warned her that she must never open the door to anyone while they were away at the mine, in case the wicked queen found out she was alive and came to kill her. Snow White stayed with the dwarfs. She was very happy looking after them, and before long she forgot all about the wicked queen. The queen, meanwhile, believing Snow White to be dead, had not bothered to ask her magic mirror her usual question, but one day, as she stood combing her hair, the queen idly asked her mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror promptly replied,
You, O Queen, are fair, it's true, but Snow White is fairer far than you. Deep within the greenwood shade, Snow White with dwarfs her home has made.
The queen was furious, and realizing that the huntsman had tricked her, she decided to kill Snow White herself. She disguised herself as an old peddler woman and made her way to the dwarf's cottage. There she found Snow White sitting by the window. "Would you like to buy a pretty comb for your hair?" asked the queen in her sweetest tone of voice. Snow White quite forgot the dwarf's warning and ran to open the door. The queen showed her a beautiful comb made of tortoise shell and gold. "Let me comb your hair," offered the queen, and she drew the comb through Snow White's long, silky hair. But the comb had been dipped in deadly poison, and when the teeth grazed Snow White's scalp, she fell down as if dead. The queen ran off, laughing cunningly, leaving the comb in Snow White's hair. When the dwarfs returned from the mine, they found Snow White lying on the ground with the poisoned comb in her hair. They snatched it out, and as they did so, Snow White opened her eyes. When they heard what had happened, they told her that the peddler woman must have been the wicked queen in disguise, and begged her again never to open the door to strangers. The queen, back at her palace, rushed to her mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" When the mirror replied,
O Queen, your poison was in vain, for Snow White is alive again.
She was furious. Rushing to the cellar, she disguised herself once more, this time as a country woman with a basket of apples. On the top she placed one juicy apple, half of which she dipped in poison. The queen reached the dwarf's cottage just as Snow White was drawing water from the well. "Who will buy my beautiful tasty apples?" she called. Snow White, remembering the dwarf's warning, ran inside and locked the door. But then she thought that if she opened the window, nothing will happen. "Let me see your apples," she called, leaning out of the open window.
Taste this one, pretty lady. It's the best,
said the queen sweetly, holding out the poisoned apple. Then, seeing Snow White hesitate, she cut the apple in half and ate the part she knew had no poison on it. Snow White took the other half, and no sooner had she taken a bite than she sank to the floor dead. The queen smiled, sure that this time the poison would work. She rushed home and spoke to her magic mirror again.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
This time the mirror replied,
You, O Queen, you are the fairest of them all.
The wicked queen smiled with satisfaction. When the dwarfs came home and found Snow White dead, they made a glass coffin and laid her in it. They put the coffin amongst the flowers in their garden and kept watch by it day and night. One day it happened that a prince came riding through the forest, and he saw the glass coffin in which Snow White lay. She looked so beautiful that he fell in love with her. He asked the dwarfs if he could take the coffin back to his castle. The dwarfs would not allow this, but they agreed to let the prince kiss Snow White. As the prince kissed Snow White, the piece of poisoned apple fell from her lips. Her eyes opened and she saw the handsome prince kneeling over her. She fell in love with him straight away. The dwarfs were overjoyed that she was alive once more, and even more delighted when the prince and Snow White agreed to marry. When the queen once again asked the mirror her favorite question,
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
It replied,
You, O Queen, are the fair, it's true. But Queen Snow White is fairer still than you.
The queen smashed the magic mirror in her rage. The king, who had discovered how she had tried to kill his lovely daughter, Snow White, banished her from the land. Snow White said goodbye to the dwarfs and rode away with her handsome prince. They were married and lived happily ever after. The Frog Prince. Mama, why is it important to keep promises? Because it can either ruin or save somebody's life. Well, it can even change one's fate. Is it, Mama? Yeah. Listen to this interesting story, The Frog Prince. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful princess who spent many happy hours playing by herself in the lovely royal garden. It was her favorite place in the whole kingdom, and when she was tired of doing nothing, she would play with a golden ball, throwing it up in the air and catching it again. And this was her favorite game. One day, as she was playing with her golden ball, it suddenly bounced away. She rushed to catch it, but it was too late. The ball dropped into a nearby pond and sank to the bottom. The princess was so upset, she sat down and cried.
lost my favorite ball.
Suddenly, she heard a voice.
Why are you crying, dear princess?
It asked. She looked around, but all she saw was an ugly frog. The frog had talked to her. She did not like frogs, but she answered politely. My special ball has fallen into the pond. The frog said,
If I dive into the pond and fetch your ball, will you promise to grant me my wish?
But what is it that you want from me? She asked, a bit worried. Is it my jewels, or my crown, or a bag of gold?
No, dear princess. I do not need those things. All I ask is that you let me come live with you in the castle. I must eat at your table with you and sleep in your bed.
The princess thought the frog was joking. Then, because she wanted her ball back so much, she said, all right, I promise. The frog leapt into the water. The princess waited anxiously, and soon the frog came back up with the golden ball. He gave it to the princess, and she quickly ran off with it. She hoped she could run away and not have to bring the frog to the palace. The frog called out to the princess,
Wait, take me with you.
And he started hopping after her. She did not even look back at him. She ran as fast as she could until she was safely back inside the palace. That evening, while she was having a quiet dinner with her father, there was a knock at the door. Her father told her to go see who it was. The princess opened the door, and there sat the frog, waiting to come in. The princess quickly shut the door, but the king noticed the frightened look on her face. He asked her who the visitor was, and she told him what had happened that day. It's just a silly little frog, she protested. How can I allow it to follow me home? A proper lady must always keep her promise, said her father. Now go and let that frog in. The princess went to the door again and opened it. The frog hopped inside and followed her. He asked to be lifted onto the table. Then he started eating from her plate. Later that evening, the frog followed the princess to her bedroom. She was very unhappy knowing that a frog would be sleeping in the bed with her. But when she placed it on her pillow, the frog suddenly changed into a prince. the handsome prince told her that an evil witch had cast a spell on him, and only a kind princess could break the spell by granting him his wish. He was so happy that the beautiful princess was the one who had broken the spell. The princess soon fell in love with the prince. He asked her to marry him, and they lived happily ever after. Aladdin and the Magic Lamp.
Sonu, did you finish your homework?
No, Papa.
Are you waiting for the genie to do it for you?
Who is Genie, Papa?
Have you ever heard of this story, Aladdin and the Magic Lamp?
No, Papa. Please tell me. Please.
Okay, listen to this wonderful story, Aladdin and the Magic Lamp. Once upon a time, there lived a boy named Aladdin. He was a clever boy, but he did not like to work. One day, Aladdin's mother sent him to the marketplace to look for a job. At the market, Aladdin met a magician who said to him, "If you do as I say, I will reward you with a lot of gold coins and jewelry that you have ever dreamed of." Aladdin was excited when he heard this. Aladdin followed the magician to a dark cave outside the town. The magician asked Aladdin to go inside the cave and find a lamp which was hidden in there. Then he gave Aladdin a ring and said, "If you are in any trouble, rub this ring and a genie will come to your rescue." Inside the cave, Aladdin was surprised by what he saw. Every corner was filled with gold and treasures. Aladdin found the lamp and quickly returned to the entrance of the cave. Aladdin called out, "Magician, magician, I have found the lamp." "Excellent, ha 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 ha," answered the magician. "Quick, quick, pass it to me." Aladdin did not trust the magician, so he said, "Not so fast, magician. You must help me out of this cave first." The magician became very angry and pushed a rock over the entrance of the cave, leaving Aladdin and the lamp behind. Aladdin tried to move the rock all by himself, but it was too big and heavy. "Oh no! I am trapped in the cave," he cried. Suddenly, he remembered the magic ring. He rubbed it with the palm of his hand. To his surprise, a genie appeared before him and in a powerful voice said, "Master, I am the genie of the ring. How can I help you?" Aladdin was a little frightened at first, but he soon found the courage to ask, Could you please send me back to my house? In no time at all, Aladdin was back home. Aladdin took out the lamp that he had found in the cave. I wonder what will happen if I rub it, thought Aladdin, stroking the lamp with his hand. Suddenly, another enormous genie stood before him. The genie of the lamp said, "Master, your wish is my command." Aladdin was very excited and wished for an enormous palace and bags full of gold. One day, a princess was passing by Aladdin's palace. She stopped to talk to Aladdin, and soon they became good friends. Before long, Aladdin and the princess fell in love. Aladdin asked the king for permission to marry the princess. The king liked Aladdin because he was kind and generous, so he agreed to the marriage. One day, the magician found out that Aladdin had the magic lamp. He was very angry that Aladdin was so rich. He wanted to get the lamp for himself. The cunning magician disguised himself as a lamp seller and went to Aladdin's palace.
Old lamps for new lamps,
he cried, carrying his lamps in a sack.
Hey friends, old lamps for new lamps.
The princess heard the old man's call. However, she did not know that Aladdin's old lamp had magical powers. She happily exchanged Aladdin's old lamp for a new one. When the magician returned home, he could hardly wait to use the magic lamp. Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! At last, it is mine! He cried with joy. The magician rubbed the lamp and the enormous genie appeared. The genie said,
Master, your wish is my command.
The magician was very pleased.
Take Aladdin's palace and the princess to a faraway land.
His wish was granted. When Aladdin returned to the place where his palace had once stood, he was shocked to find it missing. Worse still, his beloved princess had disappeared too. Aladdin remembered that he had a magic ring. He quickly rubbed the ring and asked the genie to take him to find the magic lamp. To his surprise, Aladdin found himself in the magician's house. Luckily, the magician was asleep, so Aladdin crept inside and grabbed the magic lamp. The magician did not know Aladdin had taken the lamp. Aladdin rubbed the magic lamp. Once more the enormous genie appeared and said, Master, your wish is my command. This time, Aladdin commanded the genie to send the magician to a land so far away that he would never be able to find his way home. Next, Aladdin asked for his palace to be returned. Within a few seconds, his wish was granted. The princess was inside the palace, and she was overjoyed to see Aladdin. Since that day, Aladdin and the princess have never had to worry about the magician ever again.
Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack and his mother were very poor. All they had was one cow. One day, Jack's mother said, "Go sell our cow and bring the money back to me, Jack." So Jack took the cow away to sell. On the way, he met a man who wanted to buy the cow. "I have no money," said the man, "but I will give you 5 magic beans for your cow." "All right," said Jack. And he gave the man his cow. Jack took the beans back to his mother. She was very angry. "These beans are no good to us," she said. And she threw the beans out of the window. The next day, when Jack woke up, he saw a giant beanstalk outside his window. "I want to climb to the top," said Jack. Jack started to climb the beanstalk. "No, Jack, no!" said Jack's mother. But Jack climbed up and up and up to the very top of the beanstalk. Jack saw a giant castle with a giant door. When he opened the door, he saw a giant woman. "Look out," said the woman. "My husband is coming. He will eat you up." "Fee, fi, fo, fum. Watch out, everyone. Here I come," roared the giant. "You must hide," said the woman. And she hid Jack in a cupboard. The giant came in and sat down at the table with some giant bags of money. He started to count his money. Jack watched him from inside the cupboard. Soon, the giant fell asleep. Jack came out of the cupboard and took all the money. Then, he quietly climbed down the beanstalk and gave the money to his mother. Not long after, Jack wanted to climb the beanstalk again. "No, Jack, no," said his mother. But Jack said, "I must, Mummy. I want to see the giant woman again." When Jack went up, the giant woman warned him again. "Look out," she said. "My husband is very angry because his money has been stolen." "Fee, fi, fo, fum. Watch out, everyone. Here I come," roared the giant. "You must hide in the cupboard again," said the woman. The giant came in and sat down at the table. He had with him a magic hen. Very soon, the giant fell asleep. Jack came out of the cupboard and took the hen. Then he quietly climbed down the beanstalk. The next, Jack climbed the beanstalk again. At the top of the beanstalk, Jack saw the giant woman. "Look out," said the woman. "My husband is very angry because you stole his hen and his money."
Fee, fi, fo, fum. Watch out, everyone. Here I come,
roared the giant. "You must hide," she said. "Go into the cupboard." This time, the giant came in with a magic harp. He sat down at the table and the harp started to sing to him. Soon, the giant fell asleep. And Jack quietly came out of the cupboard and took the harp. Then, he started to climb down the beanstalk. But as he climbed down, the harp started to shout, "Help me, master! Help me!" "Run away," said the woman. "The giant is awake." Jack climbed down the beanstalk with the angry giant behind him. When Jack was at the bottom, his mother ran out and gave him an axe. "Cut down the beanstalk, Jack! Quick!" she said. Jack took the axe and began to cut down the beanstalk. Crash! And that was the end of the giant. Now Jack and his mother were no longer poor, and they lived happily ever after.